The following program is seen statewide on California Public Television. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and here we are on this absolutely beautiful morning, standing right on the side of busy Interstate 15, just a few miles from the Nevada state line. Now, we've pulled off to the side of the interstate because of a road sign that has to be the most unusual and baffling of any road sign you'll see on the side of any road anywhere in California. And there it is right there, Zzyzx Road. Now, it's impossible to travel down this interstate, see this sign, and not wonder what in the world is going on here. Is this an abbreviation? Is it the name of an actual place? Well, I've done a little bit of research, and I have discovered that this is indeed a real place. A place that is full of rich and colorful history. And we're going to spend the whole day there. We're taking this exit road and heading right off there in the distance. And look at that. It's kind of forlorn and isolated looking. But it's going to be a great day, and we're going to find out what this is all about. A place that ends up being located inside one of California's golden parks. Now this is going to be a real adventure.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall.
Okay, our adventure begins, and looking out over the landscape here, we could be on the moon, we could be on Mars. I'm not sure where we are. Well, actually, Linda, I am sure where we are. We're in the good old Mojave Desert, the good old California desert. But more specifically, where are we right now?
Well, we are on the edge of Soda Dry Lake in Mojave National Preserve.
So this is all part of this huge Mojave National Preserve, which takes in how many acres?
1.6 million acres of beautiful California desert.
But this has to be, even though at first glance it looks pretty barren and desolate out there.
Boy, it does.
This has to be one of the most special, one of the most historic, one of the most interesting exact locations anywhere in that 1.6 million acres.
Yes, it really is. And it has to do with the waters here at Soda Dry Lake.
Now, wait a minute. What do you mean the waters? These do not look like waters to me, and even if there was water out there, I don't think it would be very attractive water.
Well, the lake is very dry, but right on the edge of it is a fabulous spring, Soda Spring.
Soda Spring.
Yes.
And that's what, here's the dry lake. Come on, Linda. And here is the spring. And this begins to answer the question about what this place is all about. This amazing location, which for thousands of years has been attracting people. It's called
Soda Springs, and the newer name for it is actually Zzyzx.
Zzyzx. Wait a minute, you pronounced the road sign.
Yes, I did.
Zzyzx.
Yes, I did.
Hasn't always been called Zzyzx.
No, it hasn't. It got that name in the 1940s.
Before that, it was just known as Soda
Springs. Absolutely.
All right, this is where our adventure begins right here. It doesn't get any prettier than this. Right out in the middle of the desert, we have discovered this oasis where we're going to be spending the day. And here to bring us up to speed on the very rich and very colorful history of Soda Springs is Rob Fulton, who's been here. You've been living here for well over 20 years, and you know the history of this place very well, a history which started way back thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago, Huell. Actually, The first evidence we have for human occupation of this site goes back to almost 11,000 years ago at the close of the last ice age. We see that in petroglyphs, we see that in other like rock tools that were being manufactured at that time. But at the time of European and American contact with this period, when we really knew a little bit about the prehistory of this area, we had two primary tribes of Native Americans that were active in this area. One was the Chemehueves, which are a band of southern Paiutes, and the Mojave Indians, a completely different cultural group that were an agricultural band of Indians that lived along the Colorado River and traded along routes passing through this area.
Now, were they here because of the springs, because of the water?
Well, they were here intermittently and seasonally, but why else would you want to be here except for the water? And so, yes, it's because that we have water at the site that is perennial. It's coming to the surface year-round.
Is it drinking water? Is it good water? Is it fresh, pure water?
We wouldn't choose to drink it if we didn't have to, but I think out of necessity, the Native Americans did drink it. It's slightly brackish, and it has several dissolved mineral salts in it, some of which, if you consume it habitually, can cause laxative effect.
Wow.
So,
but it was the only game in town.
It's what they had.
Well, this is so interesting, the juxtaposition of this water, this fresh water here, with this dry lake out here, which I would assume is very, very salty when there's water in there.
Yes, it's very alkaline and very salty. There is water right underneath the lake bed there. So although it's dry on the surface, you could go out there and kick your heel into it and you'd find muddy water, and if you dug a hole a couple feet deep, you'd have water welling up.
Did people use the salt? Because these look like salt flats out here.
Yeah, the salt was actually mined actively from about 1907 to 1912.
Next chapter. And for that chapter, we're walking down what appears to be this road that cuts right through the dry lake. But Rob, I've been in the California desert enough over the years to know that things are not always as they appear to be. This is not, in fact, a road. What is it?
Well, it's a railroad, Huell. It was part of the Tonopah Tidewater Railroad from 1907 to 1939.
Now, what was a railroad doing out here, and where did it go?
Well, it started near Interstate 40, about 37 miles south of here, and went 167 miles up to Death Valley to service the borax mines.
Okay, but it ended up having a major stop here.
That's right. There was salt mining going on in the lake bed out here, so they would stop and pick up the products of the salt mine and take them to Los Angeles for further processing.
So for how many years this railroad was, it's hard to believe standing here today, that there were tracks right down here?
Tracks, giant steam locomotives, hauling all sorts of ore carts and freight all the way up and down. In the latter years, it actually was being used as passenger service in the early days of Death Valley Monument. The railroad was abandoned by the State Railroad Commission in '39. The tracks were pulled up in 1942 and '43 and used in the war effort.
Wow. And now, you see, if you walked out here and didn't know what this was, you would think it was a road.
That's right, and some people still think it's a road and go out here, but they don't get very far before it becomes bumpy with some of the old railroad ties that are still embedded in the gravel. Yeah.
I love this. See, I love this part of the history of the desert. Just looking down what appears to be a road, this road that used to be a railroad, a busy railroad. And now for what I consider to be, hands down, the most colorful chapter in the story of this place. And now we're pulling out and for the first time seeing all of these buildings here. We're not isolated out in the middle of the desert anymore. We're in the middle of a little community that was built in 1944, and
Right.
The story behind that is just amazing.
It is. Curtis House Springer, a really colorful personality, a health food entrepreneur, a radio minister. He had involvements in his early career with health resorts. He came out to California in the early 40s, and in 1944 he began to look for a place to establish his own Mineral Springs Health Resort, and he found this place and established mining claims on it and set up shop here and began to build this resort.
A Mineral Springs Health Resort.
Exactly.
Is that what all of this is?
Yes.
over here?
Yes, and it had some religious underpinnings to it, but it was primarily about the health regimen out here, coming out, bringing people into the dry desert air and soaking their body in the healthful mineral waters.
And while they were here, he would work not only on their body, but on their spirits.
Exactly. There were religious programs here as well. And he also was constantly trying to sell his health products as well. Yeah.
And he was a little before his time, wasn't he, on this health stuff, this health kick?
Well, he took his cue from Kellogg, who started a lot of this way before him in the early 1900s. But yeah, he had a particular view of how people could return themselves to health by eating properly and thinking clean thoughts and exercising. You know, just very benign things, but things that are good advice for anyone.
All of which could be done out here at this resort that he built. So when he came out here, none of this was here. He built all this.
That's right. In fact, he describes it in his early writings as a mosquito swamp. You know, which isn't very attractive, but he came out here and engaged in building projects, and that's a very interesting story in how he got many of these buildings built. But over a period, primarily from the later 40s till the early 1950s, about 1955, he was building a lot of these buildings that we'll be seeing. Yeah.
Now, this then isn't natural. This is a man-made, this was made by Springer. This isn't the original.
No.
Boy, look at it down here. It looks natural down there at the end, but all of this was manufactured.
Well, all the vegetation that's growing around it is natural. It's come in because it's native to the water sites that are here. But what he actually did is excavate this big pond. He called it Lake Tewende.
Lake Tewende.
Tewende, and we don't know exactly why, but that's the name, and it's stuck to this day.
Did he build this fountain?
He had one of his workers build this fountain, who apparently was a relative of Enrico Caruso, the famous opera singer, and so they named it Caruso's Fountain. And it had lights in it that would light up at night and everything, and yeah, it was a kind of a centerpiece.
Wow, this is, and obviously he planted all these trees, so he created out here, right off this desolate, dry lake over here. Look at this. Again, this contrast. He created this oasis with palm trees and fountains and...
That's right. He engaged in a lot of landscaping here, and so you have this abrupt transition from the stark, dry lake bed to this oasis with palm trees and other plantings, tamarisk trees and oleanders and such. And he actually engaged in creating nursery stock of these trees so that he could sell them to other desert communities as landscape material. That was one of his many enterprises.
He was one of those early California desert characters, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think we could safely say he was a character. Yeah.
See, I love nosing around old places, and we've hit the jackpot today because look at this. This is one of the most historic remnants of the Springer era here.
That's correct, Huell. This is the second facility that Springer built here as a part of his Zzyzx Mineral Springs Resort. And this was the heart of the resort. This is the pool and spa building.
All right, the pool and spa building. That's the pool right over there.
Right.
And this is the spa. What, would people just come lay down in these troughs and get the waters?
3 times a day, he would pump hot water into those little troughs, and you could come and have a hot mineral bath. And people thought that it was natural hot mineral water, but it wasn't. He was heated in gas heaters, but he didn't advertise that fact.
But it was local water, at least.
Yeah, it was the water that's pumped right out of the ground here, same water we're using today.
Look at this view just looking out here. I think it's the location that makes this place so surreal in many ways. To think of being here in the baths and looking out at something that looks prehistoric.
You know, if you were here in January or July, it would certainly be surreal because it would be either freezing cold or it would be blazing hot. And you're looking out on a place called the Devil's Playground just beyond the Salt Playa out there, a colorful name.
This was a seasonal place, wasn't it? People didn't come out here in the summer.
They certainly did.
You're kidding.
Yep. The buildings were cooled, and, you know, in the summer heat out here, it's a whole different world, and some people really enjoy the heat. Certainly people still tour up into Death Valley during the summertime. So,
Oh, wow. It's a little rough around the edges here, but
Yeah.
it's interesting because this is all original. This is all
That's
still
right.
here.
This has never seen any renovation since it was abandoned in 1974, which is the end of the resort period. Now, the National Park Service has done an analysis and it has plans to renovate this building and bring it back to some semblance of its original glory for interpretive purposes. But right now, it's in pretty rough shape.
I think they ought to start pumping water back in here. I want to come out here and get the waters.
We still pump water in this little section here, and that's our little respite from the heat and during the summertime is to soak in this pool here. Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, you can't stand here without hearing the sounds of the happy bathers.
Yeah. Back under the little porch cover here, he would have electric hobby horses for the kids. He had those vibrating belt reducing machines for the ladies, you know. And it was a beehive of activity. He would have his helpers come out here and bring people ice cream from his goat dairy, which he did on site here, and cold carrot juice, you know, to keep them comfortable and such. And the water, again, is always the story here at Zzyzx Mineral Springs or at Soda Springs. And one of his favorite sayings, one of my favorite sayings of Curtis Springer's, was that when you came to Zzyzx, you would be cleansed eternally, externally, and internally. Of course, internally, because the water does have that mild laxative effect. So.
How long did people stay when they came out here to get the waters?
Well, I think some people stayed a day, some a week, and there's indication that some people stayed months at a time.
Really?
Yeah.
And when they stayed here, this is where they stayed. These are the...
This is the Sunrise building. This was the first building that was built during the resort period, and it's where he had his guests housed during their time here.
I guess we can go in there. We're walking up the steps here. Oh, wow. You are really going back in time coming in here. Very sparse, very Spartan, nothing fancy here.
Nothing fancy. You had a very basic bed in here and some minor furniture, a dresser drawer and that such. It did have cooling and it did have heat.
And it had a bathroom. And boy, I'm telling you, when you came out here, that was probably a big deal to have a sink and a toilet in your room.
Yep, just be careful closing the door. You might bang your knees. But
It was small.
Yeah.
Look at the view out the back and look at the view out the front. So boy, you could see just sitting in your room and contemplating.
most people spent their time out in the pool and spa building or walking the grounds or hiking in the desert. And the buildings were just here to house them at night.
And how expensive was it to stay here?
There were no set fees. The fee was negotiable with Dr. Springer when you arrived on site.
What do you mean negotiable?
Well, he would actually let people stay here for free if they could make a case that they couldn't afford to stay here. That was part of his work, part of his ministry. But he would look at the kind of car you were driving and the clothes you were wearing and begin from there as to, you know, well, let's negotiate how much for food, how much for lodging, how much for hot water baths, things like that.
So it was a package deal. When you came out here, you got your meals, you got your room, you got the spa, you got the pool, you got the whole thing.
Absolutely. And he, like, by not having a set fee structure, it also kept him tax exempt under his community church of Zzyzx and his foundation.
So this was not a fancy blue blood resort.
No,
ever.
no, it was not that. It was not something like Palm Springs. This is very bare bones, there to try to recover people who had ailments that felt like being out here would benefit them in some way.
You know, I got to tell you, now that the sun has come out and is beating down on us, it is that typical desert heat that you can just feel it cleansing your body. You can feel what it does
All
to
the
you.
poisons coming out of your pores.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you do. There is something about all this that works, absolutely.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, people were out here in midsummer when we can get up into the high 110s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, it's not nearly that warm today, but boy, look out here. This is just spectacular, just looking out here with the sun beating down on us and reflecting off the salt flats out there. This is the view that those early visitors had. Well, this is the view that the Native Americans had thousands of years ago, and it's the same view we have today. Now, a big part of the setup out here from those earliest days with Dr. What was he, doctor or reverend or?
He went by Dr. Springer, although he didn't have a doctorate.
Dr. Springer. A big part of the whole setup out here from those very early days were his radio broadcasts. Was there a big antenna out here that he would broadcast from?
No, he had a recording studio, and he recorded on reel-to-reel tape, duplicate those, and then send them off to broadcast centers.
All over the world, all over the United States?
All over the world. He was on AM and shortwave, and he pretty much had global coverage.
Really?
Yeah.
For like a long time?
For years and years. He started that before he started this resort. He was engaged in religious ministries and broadcasting. People might remember him, or you might have a grandparent who remembers him. He was often on late at night when airtime was inexpensive and everything, but he broadcast for probably 40-plus years.
And were these religious broadcasts? Were they,
well,
what was he doing?
They were a combination of religion, good grandfatherly advice, as well as advertisements for his health food products and for the resort here. And that's probably what drew a lot of people in here, was hearing about it on the radio. Zzyzx Mineral Springs, come and visit, stay a day, a week, or a lifetime. Yeah.
Or a lifetime.
Well, that was part of his opening line, yeah.
We're at the intersection of Castle Way and Boulevard of Dreams. And boy, he had a way of naming everything, didn't he?
That's right. And we've retained those names to this day, all the street names and building names.
All of it very inspirational. And obviously, over the years, this place grew and prospered. We're looking down the street here, and then over here. Is this what he meant by Castle Way?
Yes, and this is the castle, this two-story building, and it was housing for his guests.
So the guest quarters actually, went up in status over the years from the little ones we looked at over there.
Better amenities, more space. Yeah.
All right, now you've told me that here there was a chapel, there was a dining hall, there was housing for all of these people who would stay. There were the pools. There was a lot to do around here. How long did this place grow and prosper?
Well, its heyday were the late 50s and early 1960s, but by the late 1960s it fell into some decline, but was still operational. And it was shut down in 1974 when Curtis Springer was removed by federal marshals.
Wait a minute, removed by federal? That doesn't sound good.
No, the issue was that all this time, from 1944 on, he was on federal land on mining claims. And the Bureau of Land Management, who had jurisdiction over these federal lands, eventually had to take him to court for illegal occupation of federal lands and remove him.
And he lost.
He lost. It went through about 10 years of litigation and appeals, but eventually he lost his final appeals, and the marshals were sent out with orders to physically remove him and shut down the operation.
Well, it must have broken his heart to leave here. This was his dream.
He did, and in fact, in his last years, he died in December '85. He continued to try and reopen court cases, but without success.
Dr. Springer was taken off the land in
1974.
What happened to it after he left?
The Bureau of Land Management let it lay abandoned for 2 years while they tried to decide what the best use of the facility was. During that time, several groups wanted access to it, including the State University, to use it as a research and educational center.
California State University.
Cal State University, and eventually our bid was the one that won.
So since then, this facility has been used as what?
Well, it's research and education primarily. So we have primarily university, but we do get grade school and high school students coming out here from literally all over the world. Mostly from the western United States, but we do have classes coming from Europe and Canada and the East Coast and such.
What do? They come out here to study. Boy, looking right down here, it's obvious what they study. They're studying the desert.
That's right. Geology, archaeology, history, biology, different aspects of all those disciplines and everything. And we're offering essentially a venue, a support system for them while they're in a remote part of the Mojave Desert.
That's wonderful, and it's all through the California State University system.
That's right. We're a system-wide funded facility.
So they stay in these restored rooms in the castle.
Yep. The old guest quarters are now the dormitories for the students.
They eat in the old dining hall.
They
have lectures in the old chapel.
Exactly. We've also added some things. We've put in a laboratory and a new kitchen facility and things like that.
But this is wonderful.
We can have up to 80 people here at a time.
And they come here from all over the world. Are there people here today? day?
Yeah, we have a group.
Because I haven't seen anybody all day.
During the day, they're usually out in the desert doing their studies. So they're not here currently, but they will come back in the evening. And,
where are they from?
This group is from Duke University that's here right now.
Wow.
And I've got 3 different universities coming this weekend, and every weekend there's a group, about 2 or 3 groups that come in.
Why is this place named Zzyzx?
Well, that term was coined by Curtis Springer, and the saying goes that he always insisted on having the last word during discussions or arguments, and so he thought it would be clever to actually invent the word that would be the last in the dictionary and be, by definition, the last word. He also used it in his advertising and slogans and such, and he'd say, "Come to Zzyzx Mineral Springs, the last word in health."
So Zzyzx is the last word.
Exactly.
And isn't it interesting that even though he was removed by federal marshals from this land and died years ago away from here,
Right.
he's still getting the last word.
Pretty
We're
much.
still calling it Zzyzx.
Well, and the university wouldn't benefit from this wonderful facility if it hadn't been for all his endeavors. So.
Yeah, because he provided what eventually would become your facilities for students from all over the world to come.
Yeah, he'll always have a presence here.
Wow, it's a great story. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a wonderful day we have had here touring the old Soda Mineral Springs, and the old community of Zzyzx.
Right.
This place is full of history. It is rich. It is colorful, and it's definitely one of California's golden parks. The dream lives on.
Hello, folks. This is your old friend Curtis Springer coming to you direct from our beautiful new studios located in Zzyzx Community Church on the shores of beautiful Lake Tewendowee. And as founder and pastor of our church, I want to invite you and your loved ones to come and worship with us. Come with or without money and spend a day, a week, or a lifetime as you care to, and enjoy our beautiful 12,000-acre estate that belongs to God. Now, we have no promotion, no real estate for sale. Just come on out here and enjoy our wonderful hot mineral water baths, the finest of foods in abundance, our wonderful desert pure fresh air, no smog, no fog. Come and learn to breathe again. Lay out in the sunshine. Oh, you'll love it here and get a greater joy out of life. And so until the same time tomorrow, over the same wonderful station, I'll say bye-bye and God bless you all.
Zzyzx is out in the middle of nowhere, and it's definitely worth a visit. Now, if you'd like to go on this adventure again or share it with family or friends, it's available on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.